reliable OT networks, IP and MSTP, managing remote access, and essential troubleshooting. And this is like a whole bunch of stuff for one breakout session, but we're going to try and cover it all. Who we are, this is Greg Salisbury, and I'll let him do his introduction.
So, I don't know, new faces in here, I haven't seen a lot of you, so, but Greg Salisbury, I've been with KMC for 5 years, directly working for them, but I installed their stuff for about 9 years. Prior to that, I had my own business. I've worked with KMC, Niagara, JCI, Delta stuff, and then I spent 10 years with Johnson out of college. I went to Fair State University, HVAC degree there. So I'm in the midst of football season, so I coach my son in football, and we're having a good year. I'm enjoying that, so that's it.
I'm Pete Tuis. I've been with KMC officially for 3 years. Worked with them for 20. Before KMC, I worked for a control contractor, doing Barber Coleman, Advances, TAC, whatever they call themselves. Got the opportunity to work with the CAM Digital line, as well as the first KMD FactNet line. After that, I left the control contractor and was controls administrator for a research facility, primarily dealing with Siemens. So I had 4,800 of the coolest non-human primates for coworkers that you could ever ask for. I grew up in the industry. My dad used to take me to with him on days off of school because he was afraid I was going to set the house on fire. So way back in the early day, his boss gave me the nickname Repeat because he was Pete and I was Repeat. So if you ever hear of anybody say Repeat in the controls industry, they're probably talking about me. When I'm not doing controls, I do lock sport and RFID, and if you don't know what lock sporting is, it's basically just playing with lock picks and you're not a locksmith. But I still very much identify as a white hat, so I don't use my skills for nefarious purposes. Best practices and recommendations for successful and reliable OT networks. Wiki defines operational technology networks as hardware and software that detects or causes a change through the direct monitoring and or control of industrial equipment, assets, processes, and events. Many networks fall under this definition in the building automation industry. I'm sure all of us can think of 1 or 2 networks that falls under that definition. Some of the common types of OT networks that we see in BAS are going to be BACnet IP, BACnet MSTP, Modbus TCP/IP, RTU, SNMP, LAN, although I got in trouble in high school doing LAN jobs, so I swore off of them, and many more with third-party devices. The JSON protocol converters can be a really good friend when you're dealing with some of those third-party networks. Best practices for MSTP MAC address devices. This is the network numbers. MAC address best practices. I'm going to scoot over to the other side so I can actually read this a little bit.
And if you guys have questions or comments, just stop us.
Yeah, we're going to have a, yeah, go ahead, Joe.
You guys going to make these slides available at the end of this?
$20 I can make.
20 bucks. Cool.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, all the slides and the video presentations, from what I'm told, are going to be available after the summit. So if you want to catch one breakout session and you're giving up another one, you'll be able to go back and catch those videos and catch all the slides. So all network numbers, as we all must be unique across the BACnet network. MAC address is going to be 0 to 127. Practical limit is 30 to 40 devices per MSTP trunk. Router MAC address is 0. It's not law, but it's a darn good practice. Leave MAC address 1 for new devices. This is the #1 reason for duplicate MAC addresses. Is somebody will set a device up as MAC 1, and then they bring a new device onto the network, and then another one, and pretty soon we've got a whole bunch of duplicate addresses. We recommend leaving MAC address 2 through 4 for service tools and temporary connections. I like to always put the owner's service tool as number 3, or as number 2, and then the service tech tools for the installing contractor, the contractor service company, to be 3 and 4. That way, no matter if you've got 2 technicians on a site, both of them can be on the same trunk at the same time. I always start controller addressing with MAC 5. Max master should be 5 ahead of the highest max. It's easy expansion and less network weight. This is one of my favorite comments. Friends don't let friends use a MaxMaster of 127. Pretty, when you're sitting there troubleshooting a network and you see it, one of those little blue lines going, and there's no controllers, your network's not talking. So you want to speed that down. Possible separate networks by vendors, VFDs, RTUs. I don't necessarily worry that, my ABB 550s and my 500s are on separate trunks, but all my ABB devices are on one trunk. All my allergen devices are on one trunk. Makes life a whole lot easier when you're troubleshooting, especially when you've got some of the older firmware versions that are maybe not the latest and greatest BACnet. When you can isolate those and when you can segment them on their own trunk, it makes life a lot easier because now all your naughty communication is coming from 2 or 3 devices versus your entire network. One of my favorite things to enhance a network is to split the trunk for faster communication response. One trunk with 32 controllers versus 2 trunks with 16 controllers. If I split that one big trunk up into 2 trunks, I've now got 2 tokens that are taking care of those instead of 1 that are taking care of the entire network. Doing that alone will enhance the speed of your network marketing. Would you agree with that, Greg?
Oh yeah, definitely. And, engineering and owners are just point heavy nowadays, so the fewer controllers, the better on each lane.
The last point, a lot of people talk about, oh, I've got this super long RS-485 trunk in this building. It's going, from the north side of the building to the south side of the building. I got 2 repeaters in the middle of that trunk and I'm having trouble with communication. If you're going to spend money on a repeater, you might as well spend the extra few bucks, throw a 5051 in there. You've got the ability to have all the troubleshooting tools in there. You've got the ability to run your Wireshark captures. All that good stuff is right there. And it's a heck of a lot easier to troubleshoot it when you've got a small segment versus a super big segment.
Any questions, comments about this? Or?
Anybody do something different than this?
I did just work with a customer that's in here that used a repeater, and it helped.
Yes. We had 49 devices on the lane. Simply DAD. So we were seeing issues with some controllers dropping in and out.
Yep.
Specifically right in the middle of the network. We didn't have another network drop. The customer only allowed us so many network drops. So we had already 5 networks. So in this case, we split the network in half.
That makes a good point. So if you can't get a network drop from a customer, adding an additional repeater would probably be the only way you could do that.
That was distance too. You were close to 4,000
Pretty
feet.
close to 4,000 feet. So it was
Okay.
a very long run.
Hey, go ahead.
There's a note down here that, possible separate networks for vendors.
Yep.
Everybody knows that's ideal. Can't happen. Never happens. So that's, you got rooftop, VFD, whatever. You can't just. Why is that the case? And what drives the fact that BACnet is not BACnet? And is there some magic to picking, like we had a job recently where they had to change the MaxMaster for a chiller to 2, even though there are 34 items on the network for a guy controller. I don't know why, but what I'm getting at is are there any rules of thumb you can apply across product lines? Because as nice as that option sounds, it's seldom not.
What I've found that some manufacturers don't implement BACnet the same way.
Yeah.
And so when you have them on the same network, you run into issues. And then there's a lot of, if you can get a hold of this vendor, when somebody has the ability to configure their system, and you can get this vendor, and you guys can kind of play back and forth to get things to talk nice.
But what are you adjusting there? So is there a way for us to go, I mean, generally there's only 3 things to adjust, and I don't detect anymore, but we run into this issue when we have multiple brands. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. What do we need to coordinate with that VFD manufacturer, somebody else. I mean, there can't be 35 things that people do different with that.
So at that point, what I would do is I would pull an Mstp Wireshark capture of that trunk when things aren't going right, and then I would dissect them down to the point and find out, are we sending them the command and are they receiving the command? One of the Wireshark captures that I was just involved in, we, KMC controller sent out the BB to the device to turn, this device on. Device recognizes that it got an override at priority 8, and then it decides on the next cycle to just go ahead and shut itself off. And we figured out that we had to continuously write this point at priority 8 for it to stay on. But in troubleshooting, this network, it took us going down to the actual Mstp capture so that we could make sure that A, we were sending the command, and then B, that there wasn't another command getting sent, because this chiller manufacturer was downright convinced that we were sending an enable, and then immediately after that we were sending a disable. And so it really is, when you mix manufacturers, you're gonna have more time on the job. You're gonna have to do a little bit more investigation. Some of the things are gonna be easily fixed, some of them aren't. I know of another manufacturer's controllers that back in the late 2000s, like 2009, 2009, 2010, their implementation of BACnet wasn't the greatest. And what would happen is the present value would show up for 4, 5, 6 days, and then all of a sudden it just wouldn't. And you'd go and you'd restart the controller, and everything would start to show great. And it was nothing to do with the KMC side, it was their controllers. So you have to take every one of these manufacturers kind of at face value, and then you have to figure it out. But ideally, if you can, you want to split it up.
Well, I know this is MSTP. Do the same issues exist on IP?
As far as
the inconsistency in how manufacturers are applying communications.
I see
everything there following the TCP/IP protocol, and you don't have to worry about it.
I see less issues on IP than I do MSTP, but I still see issues. Would you agree with that, Greg?
Oh, yeah.
Because usually that's the motivation to drive towards
Yeah, and
IP.
some of it is just the speed of IP, so it masks a lot of issues, because there's, you got more bandwidth and stuff. I think timing is a big issue between manufacturers and BACnet, like how fast it, gets messages or holds the token and things like that. I think that's a big issue. So
Holding the token is a super huge issue.
That's what the issue apparently was with this, is it was holding the token too long. And so by running that down to 2, it could only hold, no, not as fast.
yeah, it's how.
No, it's the other one.
How many things that
How many
you
did you share on the network before you have
Yes.
so whatever that number is.
So one thing that I've done, because I got sick and tired of, having to go back and using Wireshark is great,
But it's time consuming.
it's time consuming and it costs a ton of money, right? So what I've done is work with a lot of our engineers, and our engineers love this because it takes the liability off of them. So I did controls dedicated only integrator for 12 years, and then now I'm on the equipment side. And now on the equipment side, I encourage to see more. So the part of the issue is now that I'm on the board primarily the equipment side, is I sell those VFDs, I sell those air handlers, they ship. I get paid way faster than you guys do, and I'm off to, that was 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 projects ago. I don't want to go back and mess with it. It's going to be a low state, even though I think it's a priority, it's something pretty low on my priority list to get back to that integrator. But so what I tell all the engineers to do is, in the spec, for every section that they want back to integration or Modbus integration or whatever, that the submittal process for that has to go through an extra layer. So it goes, obviously, G-part applications, gets to that mechanical engineer, and they will kick it to their integrator and have them check off on my submittal for my VFDs, for everything else. I tell you what, it turns into 1 or 2 emails. Hey, what battery do you have? Hey, what's your, are you the master or slave? What's going on? What's your COE that you're going to kick back to us? Are we setting that in the master, or are you setting that? And it is like this. And my submittals don't get approved until I coordinate with them, and I don't get a check cut until these submittals are approved. That's like it's a job site. So I am financially motivated now to do that. It's not the integrator's problem anymore. It's now everybody on the team. I've even got as crazy as we did a site with 12,500 hard points, 23,000 soft points, integrated in 29 different systems. We took every single master that we were tying into, shades, everything, and everybody thought this was freaking crazy, but they put it in bid. We sat in our conference room and put everything on tables. One instance of everything we're going to do, and we tied it all physically together because you're sticks. So there ain't no idea what we're talking about because it doesn't work. We had some problems, we worked out. I programmed and said thumbs up, we never had a problem on the job. Probably saved us 100 grand.
Yeah.
But hit it off, and this is no way most people
One thing about the repeater though that I found out recently working with Chris here was it does isolate, so it cleans noise off the network. So if you have VFDs or mixed vendors, sometimes just adding that to a network will help out the issue.
Are they still consensually the weakest link in the network? There was a time when they did that so that if there was a major hit, that's what would burn out, not the controllers. And we had a lot of trouble with that. We didn't lose repeaters. And the solution was wire around the repeater because the solution was the problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but it does isolate and clean noise off there. So now one thing about our repeater too, you gotta be careful with is it only goes up to 38.4 baud rate. So
That's another reason why I don't like to personally use it. Everybody familiar with the diagnostics tab at 5051? Has anybody not played with this in this room?
Should I leave?
No.
Shut the door behind me.
you should just purchase like Halo.
So,
You can stay.
so show of hands, how many people have a 5051 in their bag as a service tool? That should answer your question.
You mean only one?
I got two. Yeah, The 5051 router, the diagnostics tab is great. You can see what devices are on the network. You can get some metrics about your network. You can actually come in and see how the Mstp trunk is doing. So if you see a whole bunch of discard counts, or you see a bunch of CRC errors, you're going to be able to use that as a troubleshooting tool to dissect and get down to the nitty-gritty of what's causing the issues on your network. It is one of the greatest things in sliced bread, in my opinion.
You should have had a gray cell too. You could talk to them with a gray cell.
What?
The gray cell. He didn't have any gray ones.
We do have in the documentation of the 5051, it gives you some descriptions of the metrics. And it's actually a pretty good idea to go through here and just familiarize yourself with these so that when you start seeing some of these counts go up, you're going to be able to kind of quickly identify what could potentially be an issue. You want to take over on this anytime? Go
Doing good.
BACnet device instance best practices. The standard allows from device instance 1 to 4,194,302. Use them all. Logical organization and planning device instance makes easier troubleshooting later. I can't tell you how many networks I've gotten on, going in cold, and they say we got a problem, and I go in and I look, and there's no logical explanation of their device instance numbers. And it's like, okay, well, what's on what network? Well, 5 and 47 and 304 are on this trunk, and then we've got 1,641 on this trunk. So it really does help your, not only installers, but the people coming in afterwards to troubleshoot. If you organize by network type, Mstp, BACnet IP, organized by 4-zone location, device application, building number. I've actually seen people organize it by VLAN network numbers. There was a small school that had 4 different buildings, and VLAN 100, VLAN 101, VLAN 102, 103. Well, now their network numbers just follow their VLAN on their IP side.
And they quickly know, oh, that device is out on this network.
Yep. And so this is some just simple pictures of some BACnet IP devices. You've got an Mstp router here with a few VAV boxes on it. You got an app stat and a flex stat. Most of the time, it's going to be a pretty straightforward installation. It's going to be an MSTP trunk. You got 4 or 5 devices on it. It's pretty easy to keep this organized. When you get into something like this with a 3-story business center, where your penthouse has all your air handlers, each one of the floors has a north and south wing that has multiple controllers on it. Maybe you've got some devices down in your basement. Now it becomes pretty critical to start going in and logically organizing these things. And we gave some examples here of using floor 1 MSTP devices would be 10,001 to 19,999. Floor 2 would be 20,001 to 29,999. 3 would be so on. You can go ahead and look at these slides too as well in the
The
package.
key is to have some standards, set up some company standards for each type of site that you're gonna go into so that you can quickly work on the warranty phase or service.
If somebody calls you up and says, I've got a device that's, number 10,006, well, we're gonna be able to automatically know that that is under this floor. It's an MSTP device, and maybe it's on the north wing, so we can go check that. We don't have to go running around the building trying to find
We're
it.
trying to find drawings that maybe don't exist or somebody flew away.
Sounds like a vendor around a vehicle, so you can identify based on the segments.
Yeah, and it does, I can't stress this enough, when you organize your numbers, it makes troubleshooting a heck of a lot easier. And this 3-story business center, you could even use this application for like a small campus that has multiple buildings. You could use this for, a building that has different clients, I see buildings that have, Company A has the 1st and 2nd floors, so they have their own building automation system. Company B has like floors 5, 6, and 7, they have their own. So you can go through and you can do your device instances based on pretty much anything, but just keep them logical.
And try and think about where that customer is gonna go in the future. Is there gonna be expansion, so kind of plan accordingly.
Yeah, so like here, if, 10,000 to 19,000, if I just put that 10,000 to 11,000, that might be good for that first floor, but if we start, expanding that, you don't want to limit yourself. So I wouldn't do hundreds, I wouldn't do thousands. I start at 10,000 for MSTP devices.
Yeah, 4 million.
Yeah, 4 million. I mean, it's pretty easy. You want to? Oh, I'm straight. Oh,
You know more about IT.
Did you have any slides regarding wiring practices, types of wires?
no, we don't, but if you would like some wiring practices, I think we have a couple of technical bulletins about them. So yeah.
Well, when you do an MSTP network, there's always a debate. Should be 18.2 or should be 20 or 22
Yeah.
or 24 or what's the sweet spot?
So I think we recommend either 18 or 22 now. It was always 18 was our recommendation, but I think we added a 22 gauge wire.
Okay, now if you have longer runs, would you recommend the higher, like 18 gauge wire, or for longer run, just by a smaller gauge? Is there?
I don't know. I mean, I just always had good luck with 18 gauge wire, and that's what I stuck with. But I know some guys, if they're going to go up to a faster baud rate, the 78,000, they'll go to 22 gauge, so they'll get a lighter wire. But I don't know.
That's the only reason I've ever used 22 gauge, because
Yeah.
I want to go higher speed.
There's a backnet document now that tells you that as well.
Yeah.
It tells you it's 18, this is the recommended baud rate, 20 is this rate, 22 is this rate. Small little wires are faster costs. There's actually backnet document.
Kind of like smaller the car, faster it goes.
Different manufacturers recommend different gauges. Like, so if you're gonna have KMC back in the network, you're gonna have a carrier or an AV or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to look that up. I would get it under site, look it up. But they probably do. I mean,
For diagram, you think they're 8 standard, or or something.
Yeah.
Signs.
Well, I think MagNet has their standard, like Carol said. But you know, if you deal with like Windy City Wire, your wire there, you can ask them, hey, I need some carrier network, Mstp. Well, they probably have it, you know what they use. Most vendors have a standard and they carry it there.
And cables is often more important than the cable.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like 50 microfarrads or below. It's kind of typical, so.
Yeah, and I think the last time I looked, KMC still references the old Belden's 728060 or 860 or something like that, whatever the old Belden number was from the 80s. The new stuff that's out there now blows that out of the water. I mean, it's not even
It
close.
was pretty expensive, I think.
Oh, yeah, it's double roll of 18.2 sensor wire, 18.2 car
I think we updated.
I do believe we updated it. We had a big discussion in one of our engineering meetings about that.
Yeah, I know the last time I pulled it, it's still, the recommended was a Belden, and it was still the old 5-digit Belden number. Because the latest Belden part number for factory is a 4-digit number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jason with that.
Yeah.
So,
But it's,
We get held on that a lot from engineering. If we, you know, when we spec a wire and we have to send them submittal, we go with it and all that.
I know we had a question last year from a customer if they could use a brand of wire that we didn't have listed, and it pretty much boiled down to as long as it was the same, you know, physical characteristics, same impedance and all that kind of stuff. That was really what the big deal was. But I do know that I do know that we updated it, so let me get you another copy. And if it's not,
It's 8276. It took a minute for my brain to pick it up. But the old Belden number was 8276.
yeah.
all right. So IP network best practices, and this is kind of Pete's wheelhouse for overtime, but is everybody, you know, we have our whole line of IP controllers for the Conquest. Are you guys seeing more of it out there, or are you using more of it? Seeing specs?
I'm seeing it spec more as you're moving forward. I have yet to do one personally, but as we're moving to upgrades, more and more customers are looking to IT or UIP.
Yeah. I got a question for you. When you're dealing with your IT departments on job sites, how friendly are they, you guys?
Not very frequent. There's a few, but not most of them, you're on the back burner.
Yeah.
No importance.
Does anybody ever get the feeling that, hey man, you're coming onto my playground and I don't like you just because?
It's the fear of the unknown.
Yep.
Well, what is that box? That's nothing.
That's it right there.
And the biggest pushback that I've been getting of going to an IP-based device instead of an Mstp for running all the devices on is, you're nuts. I'm not going to give you 48 IP addresses. My switch is already full. You can have 2. Okay, now back to 251s and everything in Mstp.
Or you
They won't let you
run your own, or you run your own network.
Yeah, you
Well, the pushback there is no, we don't allow cascading switches. So you can't put a switch connected to my switch, you know, because they don't allow cascading switches. And you definitely can't, because if they're a big company, say UPS, they know everything that goes to every port of every switch in the world.
Yep.
So if I come in and I bring my own 8-port hub or whatever, and I plug it into one of theirs, as soon as they see 8 different IP addresses hit that one port,
Yep, they'll show you.
it's an automatic lockout. It's not even a human doing it.
Yep.
They already wrote the script that says multiple IPs to the single port, shut the port down.
Yep.
So now I don't see anything. They just killed me in their switch.
And they're probably gonna arrest you.
And that's when the national emails come and the phone calls come and, you know, and they go, oh, we should have known it was Harold. You know?
I got a question. Is it the FedEx truck that comes and picks you up from UPS?
Well, you know, when they told me the story a while ago, it actually happened to one of the guys that sitting at the table with me. He got escorted off of a UPS job. And I don't think none of his people's in here. But, I mean, we joke about it, so he don't care to tell the story. He actually got called into the office because the big wig for UPS happened to show up on the job this day. And he seen a FedEx guy come in, carried a KMC box in, and he asked him, "Who's KMC?" And he went and got Greg. It's Greg Box, you might don't know. Greg come in there, and he looked at him and said, "How dare you? Off my property right now." And he told the FedEx guy to take the box back with him and go, you know where. As soon as somebody seen it, they hollered at me, so I hollered at somebody else and said, "Chase the truck, we gotta have the parts, number one." So he chased the truck driver down and got the box of parts. Greg had already left. I had to go back in there and say, "Look, that's the last time on the job you want to leave. He's the glue."
Right.
You know, so I had to call Greg and get him back in there. So yeah, he got kicked off the job site for having FedEx deliver to a UCS job site.
Does anybody create their own IP networks on customer sites?
I kind of do, because they give me a range,
Right.
and then we go from there.
How, if you have your choice, what would you rather?
Create your own,
Yeah, create your own.
especially new construction, I'll see it away.
One of the biggest problems that I hear is when dealing with IT departments is they don't understand what we do. You know, we're bringing a widget onto their network, you know, for all they know, it's tied in with North Korea and Kim Jong-un is gonna be, you know, launching, you know, ballistic missiles from our controllers.
People have found out that now that we're in the IT world, that you can get money to hack a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, so that's actually another great point. A lot of these upgrades that are coming for vintage systems that aren't IP enabled, they're actually going to the IT departments and saying, "Hey, cough up some dough because we're now going to go in and we're going to upgrade the system. We're going to bring in the IP controllers, and they're going to be in your wheelhouse now."
I think those are 4-year plan to upgrade their facilities, that's all they build a budget. We had a thing for IP, big responsibility.
Yeah, IT departments typically have more money than the operations of these guys.
They're big on security, and so when I know the regional research facility that I work for, it was owned by a university, and it went 4 years with me unable to upgrade my panels in one of my air handler rooms. And it got to the point where we were going to be upgrading the front end, and it wasn't going to be compatible with these old panels. And so it became really urgent that I spend $500,000 to go through my campus and update these panels. And my boss comes to me, the facility manager, and he says, "You want how much money?" And he's like, "Yeah, you better go pee up a rope." You know, he's like, "I can't ask for $500,000. So we went over to the IT department because they're spinning up a server for this new fancy front end. And I said, "Well, guys," I said, "we're still going to have to run that old server because it is the only thing that talks to the old panels. So sorry about your luck." And the guy says, "Well, that old server isn't as secure as this new one's going to be." And I said, "Well, sorry, the panels, you know, they're old. They're not going to hook up to the new one." I said, "My boss won't let me spend $500,000. He says, "Oh, it's only $500,000. There you go get it done." And within 6 weeks, we had a check cut to the contractor. They came in and replaced all our panels, and now it became an IT system because it was now on their network. They were able to have a little bit of viewability to it. And the cool part came when one of the IT guys came to me and says, "I know you know all about this building automation stuff." He's like, "But I think it's all voodoo, so can you help me understand it?" And when that relationship built, that was, I think, the key to that project. When we had somebody from IT that was willing to say, "Hey man, I know that you need my services. I know I need your services." Because once he figured out I was the guy that was controlling the air conditioning in his server room, boy, things changed real quick. It's like, let's get you guys, make sure that you don't have any, unforeseen issues. Let's make sure that you're always connected. Let's make sure that you guys see all that you need to see on these controllers. And I gave him all the information, and I answered all the questions that he had to ask. Once we were done with that, he was pretty open about putting stuff on the network. We created our own virtual LAN because he had that ability. So we put all the building automation system on its own network, so they could still, as the IT group, they could still control it. But now the IT, the building automation stuff, was not on the same network as all of the HIPAA compliant servers. Because at the end of the day, I was still working for a university hospital, and everything had to be HIPAA compliant, and that was there. Debbie, do you have something? You raised your hand earlier.
Yeah, it's a comment. There's going to be a breakout session, today or tomorrow, we need your schedules. There's a gentleman here from Chicago Public Schools, which is the third largest school district in the country. And the exact way they went through this is they went through the IT department to justify putting in the product. So there are IT budgets now that are much different than the facilities guys we're used to dealing with.
Yep. And if you guys don't know Paul Valentine from CPS, definitely check his thing out.
145 today.
Yeah.
The system is critical, air handler movement is critical, security critical, and the focus that was put on that as a result of that one statement in a board meeting.
Yep.
My system's critical, and it was one of the bigger systems on the network, just knowing I don't know about that.
Yep.
And that gave a lot more attention and effort
Yeah.
to bring it up.
Yeah, I had an effluent decontamination system, which if you guys want the technical term, is a turd burner. It's a 600-gallon tank, steel tank. You fill it up with effluent, you seal it up, you turn the steam onto it, you cook it for 45 minutes, and then everything bad from the lab is killed. Because the whole idea is that with heat and exposure, you're going to kill it. Well, this thing is very critical to this lab operating. And when it was installed, the manufacturer that came in, this is a GE PLC, so I mean, it has the ability to plug into the internet, but the manufacturer says, no, it has to be standalone. For security purposes, this thing has to stand alone. And so what happens when there's a problem with this thing and it leaks and I can't go into the room, how do I control it? And he says, oh, that'll never happen. 6 months after it was installed, I get a page on my pager that says fire alarm, ASA building, which was our building that had this in it. And I'm like, oh, that's funny, I don't see smoke. So we go over, and there's a whole bunch of steam coming out of this pit where this effluent decontamination system is. And I'm looking down there, and it's burping out steam. There's no way I'm going into this room. The only thing we could do is go into the main room, shut the main steam of the building off, shut all of the power to that room down, and wait for everything to go cool. Then I had my environmental health people come in. They had to sanitize the whole place before we could get into it. Called the manufacturer up and said, hey, remember that thing that was never supposed to happen? Well, it happened. 2 weeks later, they had a solution for us. We were on the network. We had it integrated into our building automation system. It would send alarms out every time it had a hiccup. Everything was back down and happy at that point.
So I think the key is open communication, be upfront with them. If you can give them good information, hopefully you'll get good information back. How many devices, how many IP addresses, subnet masks, gateways, things like that.
When you go talk to them, you should have, your as-built ready to go. You should show them how many devices you're going to need to connect to the network, what, the flow of the information is, and then be able to explain to them from the thermostat to the front end. Somebody's going to go over, it's going to push the button, it controls the VAV box, the VAV box controls the air handler controls the building. It's like, they need to understand what your application is, because their application is computer, server, network. Make sure everybody can get to YouTube. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So
if you,
Well, I was gonna say, one other thing that we're getting pushback with from a security standpoint is the 5051 not running HTTPS.
that is,
I get about every 3 months, I get an email saying, get it updated or we can kick you off. So I forward that to you guys. So I'm waiting for you guys to send us back the HTTPS.
there's a hitch in the get along right now. That's a technical term, Harold.
That's right.
It is coming. There's just been a couple of things that they need to make sure they get right before they put it out. Sometime after today. So, I feel pretty confident with that right now.
Well, that's good. For the next email, I can send that back to them. Say the official word is it's coming sometime after this email.
after this conference,
Yeah.
be looking for it sometime.
If you guys want to know the guy to talk to after this conference, to keep that as something that you want as a feature brought to the top of the line, come see me, and maybe for a cigar, I'll share that information.
So, VLANs are good too, like Pete mentioned, it gets you off the rest of the network and other information. And it makes the networking easier, then you don't have to use BDMDs and things like that to get across segments. So, and then hopefully you can talk them into giving you remote access and VPN and all that good stuff.
If we go on, if Toasty Boxes was here, we're just starting to play with Toasty Boxes. Has anybody here done a lot with Toasty Box?
Yeah.
Thumbs down, side up?
Microwave, I don't see how to do that.
Well, that's what we're thinking, but we don't want to, you go down that road and you find out there's some key factor you didn't figure into it. So we're starting to dive into it.
There's some specifics that you need to be aware of when implementing TossiBox, but once you've got kind of the rules of thumb, the rules of the road, it's pretty easy to go. We're gonna go through some of that today, so don't steal all my thunder.
Okay.
What do you think now?
Right, all these headings were about.
During John's speech, I was on the laptop via TossiBox, turning on the show for a customer.
Some point on.
We pretty much included TossiBox in every job we did. Yeah, we did. Every job we did gets a TossiBox.
Well, that's what we talked about doing, but now I'm much more confident doing it because somebody else.
And Pete's really great. He's actually got some training videos on the
Yeah. Joe calls me up. Joe's the guy sitting in the back of the blue shirt. He works for Long Denver. He'll call me up and he'll say, "Hey, I got a job. I got problems." He'll send me a soft key.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll install that. I'll log in. It's just like I'm taking the big Ethernet cable from Portland, Oregon to Denver. I can do whatever troubleshooting I need to do to help him. And then once I'm done, I pull out. He revokes it, and I can't use that.
I don't want to steer your thunder. You're on this road, man. One major question.
Yep.
When you go to,
We'll go over it.
you tell the IT people about it, or you just stick it in there.
You definitely want to make them aware of it. You need to.
Well, I know that's the official name, so I learned my lesson about following the official path.
I would not. I personally, this is Pete, Joe's IoT integration engineer talking. I personally would not put something on somebody's network without informing them about it, especially a TossiBox, because a TossiBox potentially can open you up to accessing things on their network that you don't want to access. So if you now have access to a server, if you now have access to something that is completely out of your wheelhouse, even though you don't touch it, if something bad happens to that, just because you had your little widget in there, there could be a potential for some concern or some even looking at you. So whenever I utilize a TossiBox, I always make sure that it's either going on my own network, like Harold and I do. We use a commander for the internet access, and we put TossiBox behind it, and then our network is behind the commander. Joe does similar things, don't you?
Most of the time it's our own network. Then we ask for network drop from the guys, either commander or not. It could be a Niagara job.
Yeah, just going and throwing it on their network, that could you could have a bad day.
I will say that everywhere we went to IT and asked them to put it on, we have never been turned down.
So they don't look at that like, how is this any different from a Jace? I don't know what this thing is.
IT guys will understand what a TossiBox is years before they understand what a Jace is.
Yeah.
I promise.
I didn't get sidetracked.
Yeah, and then they ask me what J stands for, and I say Java Application Controller.
Java.
And they're like, Java? Get that off my network.
That separation being that, putting something on that, the exposure to things you are not supposed to be on.
Yeah, that is a big deal. And I've been on the receiving end of somebody accusing one of my partners of having access to something, and it was pretty involved for them. They had to prove that it wasn't them that caused the issue. So it's not the whole innocent until proven guilty. It's guilty until proven innocent on the IT network.
And there's good documentation, on the TossiBox website about the security and stuff like that you can share with IT partners.
Just real quick, lesson learned is what expensive. We had something equivalent to a TossiBox on a big project, a big developer tied into the university. And to make it easier, the guy who ran the building, Buddy, changed it so the username was blank and the password was a mascot of the team.
That's pretty easy to social engineer.
Yeah. So, and also at university, that's like where we was getting them on hacks, because students sit there on the screw stuff. So they're using it for Bitcoin mining. They're taking this big campus, we had a dedicated server sitting there, and they take a hammer and drop it. So they were doing the Bitcoin mining. They were letting it max out the processor and then crash. So between that developer and the university and us not wanting to get lawyers involved, we ended up bonding $40,000. And there was no argument because we had all the evidence in the world. We do password chain and everything, and it didn't matter. You talk to your blue in the face, but we got big wigs with universities looking at you as a developer who writes big checks. You're gonna pay for that $40,000 server, you gotta do it.
This is just more example of our existing network with this 3-story building with IT, just how you set some IP addresses up. And again, all these slides are gonna be available for you at the end of it.
Just know, like, if you're on their network, you're gonna have to deal with their addresses that they give you and kind of work your system, device instance and stuff like that into their standards.
One of the things that I wanted to point out was that we've separated this by floors. So each one of the floors, we know exactly how many controllers we're going to be utilizing. So we can hand that off to IT. We can say, hey, IT, we've got 5 devices in the basement, 2 on the first floor, 2 on the second, 2 on the third, and then we've got 5 up on the 4th floor. Can you go ahead and give us IP addresses? And then them having different networks, they give you these addresses on this network, these addresses on this network. Whenever you go across a similar segments, does everybody know what you need to communicate with backnet?
Our router.
There you go. Hand your pocket shirt. BBMD with our router. Okay, so.
Yeah, so again, you need a BBMD and a router to get across those networks. So if you're going into a job and you don't know, hey, just plan on putting routers on those subnets so that if you can then build your own, oh great, you got extra routers to use or use on the next job, or so you say minimize risk.
And so this just kind of shows you the floor router configuration. So I've got one router on the floor that's enabled for BBMD. It's set up 47810 with a network number of 47810. I got taught that back when I was cutting my teeth on BACnet by a guy by the name of Paul Ray. Some of you guys might remember that guy. He was tech support for years for KMC. But he put that into my head that, the BBMD network should be the network of your port so that you can always remember it and know that it's different. And so that just always stuck with me. So whenever you see a job that I do, all my BBMDs are probably going to be 47810. But then this would be 4000 is our network number that we configured, 47808, and then we've got 4001 for our network number for this Mstp trunk. And then over here, we're on 4000 is the 4th floor. We're not enabling the BBMD on this one because it only needs to be enabled on 1. And then we've got this one is 4002, MAC address 0. All of our addresses are set, our max master is set, max info frames, and our usage timeout set up.
So you only need one BBMD device per IP subnet.
Does anybody know what the home port's used for? What the significance of that is?
So the router will answer first.
This is what port the router shows up on when you do a network discovery.
Yeah.
So if you want all of your networks or all of your routers to show up on your IP network, you'd put this to IP port 2. If you wanted the router to show up on your MSTP trunk when you did a network discover, you'd put this down to MSTP port.
Now, one thing about that is if you make the MSTP your home port, it will talk at that packet sizes. So getting out of there on the IP side will be slower. I know 47808 is kind of the standard for BACnet. Feel free to use something else, especially when you go into a site that has multiple vendors, and do not use network number 1. Get creative there.
Friends don't let friends use network.
Yes. Or 4780. You know, move them. I think it's what 4708 to maybe 4720 is kind of the standard. So it's 16. Okay. So feel free to use those and get off those standard ports.
Another thing I do know of customers utilizing multiple ports. So they've got the, one big ass network, and they've got part of their network talking on 47808, part of their network talking on 47809, and that's how they kind of split up their buildings. It's works for them, and it appears that it works a little faster than having everything on one, but I haven't done, actual metrics to measure it. But yeah, you don't have to stay at 47808 at all.
IP network on a new site, hey, that's where you can hopefully kind of drive it, maybe build your own network, and then at the end of it, put it on their network, so you only need one network address. With our IP controllers, it's a good idea to use routers with the spanning tree protocol and loop your networks back. Does everybody know what that does, the spanning tree protocol? No? So what it'll do is out of the port, so you're going to go out, hit a bunch of devices, and then make your way back and plug it back into that router. So if a device goes offline, that router will then detect that and then start communicating out both ports. So you minimize the loss of controllers out there on the network.
That was going to be my question. It's one of our concerns.
Yeah.
When you have 30 DABs.
Yeah, you're still going to have an issue, like if you've got one that goes off, gets power down here, and then 4 more devices and another one. Yeah, you're going to lose those in the middle, but you'll get everything else.
So you're setting what up for this spanning tree?
Your router, your IP router,
Your network
not the
switch.
back network switch, or switch.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, switch.
So your switch, you basically come out of one port here, you wire it into the first controller, and then from controller number 1, everybody knows that our IP controllers have a 2-port switch in them, right? So you take that second port, put it over to your second controller. The second port from the second controller goes to the first port of the third controller. The second port of the third controller comes back to that network switch. And in a normal day, things just happen. They communicate. Well, let's say Joe Schmuckatelli, contractor, comes through and cuts that cable for you. You're still able to communicate with this one because you've got this connection to it. And you're still able to connect to this one because you can still get to it from here. So, yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned the 8 or 4 port choose. Is there a proprietary or a version of that you have to be inbound, outbound?
No, I just use it as a general rule of thumb because when I'm looking at the controller, I plug the first one in that's coming from the controller going to the left, and the one to the right's going to the right. So that's just to settle my keeper in mind.
Very good. You could cross them if you want.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, however you want to do it.
Switch decides.
It's just a logical switch. Another cool thing about the IP controllers, let's say you've got your head stuck up in a suspended ceiling, it's got some VAV boxes in it, and you're like, oh man, I really wish I could put my laptop up to here, like Ethernet right now. You disconnect this guy, this guy's still talking, right? Plug your laptop into there, now you're on the network. These are still talking, this is still talking. Just make sure you plug it back in when you're done, so.
That layout there is where I've seen the biggest grief when you go talk IT and you draw that picture. They're like, what? You can't do that. Don't plug in the switch twice.
They have to support spanning tree protocol.
We do. The newer the guy, the more less likely.
We do have a tech-based article on spanning tree protocol that you can hand to your uninformed IT guys. Most of your savvy CCIE, CCNA, all the other 4-letter Cisco acronyms for training, all those guys should be pretty cool with what we're doing. It's super easy to demonstrate this to somebody. So if you guys, how many people in here have a demo at their office of a couple controllers? Yeah. Have you guys played with the IP controllers at all? Or
Yeah.
maybe found that they're faster than the MSTP controllers?
I think we're just at that point now where we're really starting to learn. I think we've done 2 jobs, and one of them small enough that you can't see the speed difference, but we're getting ready to do a pretty good sized job. Speed, and so we're gonna find out.
I'm interested to hear what you have to say after that, because I think you're gonna be pleasantly surprised.
I'm just hoping to get rid of all the MSTP problems, and we spend so much time creating MSTP problems. And it's on job, right?
Do you, so it's existing stuff is where you?
Not necessarily, you just get a job that's got 10 different brands of equipment, everyone's got a back controller, and we just struggle with it. But we get the job's fine, we get a phone call, stuff's down, we go out, but the MD doesn't want to talk to everybody.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many hours I've sat on the other side of a bucket, running Wireshark, trying to figure out why one MSTP device ain't talking to the other.
Exactly, we're just hoping to get rid of that because it's not predictable. You can't price it into a project, and you can't price it in the first year warranty.
Right.
Because you can have a 4-day problem because one controller's pickup.
My sales guy at the controls company that I work for, he'd come to me and he'd ask me, he'd say, okay, how many tech hours do I need? I said, about 8 or 10. He says, okay, now how many real tech hours do I need? I said, about 20. He says, okay, I'll do the job.
We'll take the higher speed, but that isn't what I need.
I want to
to
What's that?
The problem is to win the job on bid day, the answer is 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true.
That's the bad. And 2 turned into 2 weeks.
One thing I did want to point out is all network switches are not created equal, so just because you can plug something into it doesn't mean that it's going to support spanning tree protocol. It also doesn't mean that it's going to support 10,000 or 1,000, so just be aware of that.
Cable testing. Yeah, very important.
How many people just use one of those little plug-in the end and it lights up the little LEDs? How many cables have you tested and the thing says your cable's good and you go to plug it in and you're like, it's not quite good? Anybody heard of a real world certifier? Yeah, Harold has one. You got it. So Trip Light makes a little thing, it's about this big. It's not like a fluke meter, so it's not an analyzer. But what it does is it simulates the bulk of traffic going across the wire. So not only does it test pairs, crosses, shorts, but it also puts something on the wire to see if it can actually handle it. And it will give you between Cat 5 to Cat 6E, compliance. And it's not certifiable, but it's good enough to know that when you walk away from that cable, you're not going to have to touch it again. And
Pay for itself.
yeah, it's $300 on Amazon.
You want to write it down for the people that want to know them?
If anybody has any questions or does want one or wants more information, I can show it at the end of this. I'll hold it up on Amazon. But they are handy in the pocket and shirt. It has saved me probably a dozen callbacks, and with one truck roll, I pretty much paid for it.
The other thing is test your stack cables too. So Chris ran into this on his problem network. The MSTP does travel down to a net sensor. So if that is a bad crimp, it's going to take your network down.
That's the same cabling though, we can use this same device.
Yeah, Ethernet.
It doesn't change.
Ethernet Cat 5.
Usually they swap it.
Also, MSTP goes always a net center?
On MSTP controllers.
Ran into that this summer.
So the back 5901 that radios to the boat Cat 5 cable,
They're smaller.
Wow.
It was heavy. I was not.
It's good to test.
There you go, like this.
Everybody for turd. This part would come on, I can look at a student my table. Something important. It's not thermostat, table. Don't run out.
Yeah. I got a customer called me up and bought some of those the ends that you push the cable through, so it actually has all the wires on it, so that you can confirm that you've got it all the way in. And he did a whole job with these. And he calls me up and he says, man, he says, I just don't know what's going on. He says, I keep crimping these cables. He says, I get the color right. He says, it's maybe 1 out of 10 is checking out for me. And you go on Amazon where he bought them, and you know, these are a knockoff brand, and somebody said just that, it's not the correct size. And he was using a bigger or smaller wire for a bigger hole. So apparently there's a difference with the wire size. Internet connections might be separate from customer networks. There's a lot of times that I hear of people going on to, you know, a customer site and they're like, oh, we don't want building automation on our network. You got to provide us an internet connection or something like that. Commander allows you your own network with a single connection to the customer's network. Utilize a secondary network adapter for private BAS network. Besides Harold, who else in this room has heard of Commander or played with Commander? How many people in this room are excited for the new UI presentation later on today? Hey, there we go. We're going to go into Commander a little bit more in that. This is just my teaser.
The Jace has 2 ports too, so we can do the same thing. And you know, if you're using soft Jaces or your supervisors on industrial, typically those will have 2 network connections too.
And if you don't know, Greg is your phone friend for Jace questions. I'm your phone friend for Commander questions. And this,
Is there a Slack channel for a day?
no, they haven't.
One more reason to stay away from them pieces of well. Go Commander.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a new network behind the Commander that we put in. So you got your Commander gateway right here. We've got our 2 routers. Each one of the routers has a trunk on it. All this stuff goes back to the gateways, and the gateway has one connection out to the internet. Again, I just put that in here just to tease.
Secure remote access.
My ties in Tahiti while supporting BAS. A few different ways to secure and access your OT network remotely. Everybody knows about the public IP address and forwarding directly to the device through a firewall, right? That's like your #1 way to do it. And customer's IT department provides a VPN connection. That's more times than not, that's coming up more and more these days. Tossie box lock and key, that's handier than pocket and shirt. And then the KMC Commander IoT platform, again, handier than pocket and shirt. Public IP address with port forwarding. I can tell you right now that you're going to have a bad day quickly approaching. Public IP address means anyone can see you. Rely on your device for security. Anybody know the default username and password for most devices? Admin. Firmware updates. Tech bulletins on devices. You know, if you go and you pull up, you know, insert name of company here, and you pull up, you're going to see that, hey, I've got this security vulnerability with this firmware. I've got this security vulnerability with firmware. Well, if I know the device hasn't had a firmware update and I want to go be that, you know, nefarious actor, I might leverage one of those deficiencies to get access to that device. Intrusion detection on firewalls is never equal. You've got some IT departments that, I mean, you know, your controller burps and it knows about it. Then you've got other IT departments that are actively getting, you know, attacked. And they're like, no, everything's good, man. You know, you're like, dude, I'm seeing IP addresses from North Korea coming in. What's up with it? Oh, that's my cousin Kim Jong. He's cool. BDMD informed devices don't require logins. How could I use that to, you know, leverage somebody's network? And of course, your ports are open, so I just let myself in.
We highly discourage this connection.
Yeah, if you haven't told by my sarcasm, this is not the way to go. And I think you'll see on the next one. So, does everybody know what Shodan is? S-H-O-D-A-N? It's like a search engine for IPs and things of that nature. I just did a generic search for 47808, and I found 3,903 references of it. And I guarantee you that if you were to go in and attempt to connect your router to one of these BBMDs, you have a high probability of getting in. I don't remember what these were. There was a law enforcement, there was a juvenile center that I saw, there was a police station that I saw. one of the urgent care facilities, and you can see all kinds of stuff with Shodan. You can see the object name, the location, the vendor name. I can see the firmware here, and then under here I can see the entire list of BBMDs that's on that network. So I can start going and utilizing that to go in and shut air handlers down, and nobody will know I've even been in there.
And this is getting better. I remember, 4 or 5 years ago, I was in a training class and we did this, and it was around 12,000 devices. So our industry's kind of coming around.
But yeah, port forwarding, no. Customer provided VPN solutions. You don't have to support or maintain the VPN service. This can be a pro and a con. The pro of a customer provided VPN solution is that it's not your responsibility for security, it's theirs. This works really good when you're going into the healthcare industry with HIPAA and stuff like that.
Keeping it updated, installing.
Yeah. It can be certificate or address-based access, so a lot of customers will be like, here's a security certificate for your technician, and some of them will be like, nope, we want to know your office's public IP address because we're only going to allow that IP address in.
Or MAC address. Server.
Yep. And then layer 2 support for Connect and other programming tools needs to be specified, but if they're already providing you a VPN solution, this should be a pretty easy lift for them. The cons of customer provided VPN solutions, if you've got a smaller third-party IT group, they are definitely hard to work with at times. Updates are not passed down to the contractors for the client software because it's kind of like one of those things we issue it when we forget it. So you go, to connect into the network and it's like, oh, yep, you're dead. The only time you're gonna have to call in for problems is when, mission critical things are down and this is like when you need to get in.
It's always when you really need it.
Yeah, it'll break when you need it the most. IT groups are reluctant to give access to non-IT versed people. I see this all the time. I get a call from a customer and I say, well, I tried to talk to the IT guy and I told him I had a router that I needed to plug in. I told him I had a server that I had to plug in. And all he's talking about is a 5901 controller. And I'm like, well, you told me the wrong thing, man. You gotta explain to them what you're doing. So if any non-IT versed people in this room, what do you find the biggest struggle when you're dealing with IT departments to be?
Well, just simply that they have to control and everybody involved in the construction process doesn't understand that. So when they say, literally I've been in conference calls, everybody's in there, and I tell him, and he says, I'm just gonna tell you right now, you will never put that on my network. There's just nowhere to go. He said, you will not go, really. And we get it, and we work, some of them, it's just really weird, like big companies that they're able to work through, and then other companies that not a snowball chance, there's nothing you can say to them. And, but it is a struggle on almost every project.
So then in situations like that, do you then just go ahead and create your own network and do your own thing?
We do one of about 3 things. One is, more often than not, we leave a pet waiver freedom point hanging on that wall until we're out of warranty. Essentially tell them at the end of warranty, you're not gonna be able to get into it anymore either, because that's how you're getting into it right now.
Right.
You gotta go to IT, somebody's gotta convince somebody to put this in, because otherwise they're just completely not motivated. It isn't even, like often, they just simply, it'll go on for weeks and months. We had a large customer who makes tea, big tea beverage company. And I mean, it was like a comedy because I had to answer something. It was like 77 emails. So went back and forth. We're trying to get guys to set up a VPN for us. And the whole time we're getting like, because the guy can't see his stuff, he can't get into it, everything else is saying, look. And then you take all that, you send it to your construction folks that you're dealing with. It's just white, because it's 2 technical people arguing with each other. And we're half the problem.
Have you ever engaged like us when you're dealing with those kind of hard-nosed IT guys? Because that's something that I have, and I'll tell you, all of you guys right now, if you've ever come up against a hard-nosed IT group, give me a call. I love to go toe-to-toe with those guys, and a lot of times it really is just you just need to ease their troubled mind. And, us as the manufacturer, if we can help you, sell a solution to a customer, if we can help you implement a solution to a customer, I mean, that's what I'm doing. I mean, that's my job. That's Greg's job. I mean, we're here to help you with that.
We still got customers that were 3 years out of warranty, we just haven't pulled the plug on the wireless cellular yet because we know we're gonna get a phone call.
And you mentioned a word that I've heard before, cradle point. How's your experience with cradle point?
They're kind of gone now. We replaced them with Pathway, and we're hoping to replace them with Hudson Box. Yeah, Cradle Point quit updating their firmware to match Verizon and the other brands, and they basically became a boat anchor overnight.
Yeah.
And so we went Pathway, and that's been fairly functional, but it's full of all the problems associated with it.
One of the things with the Tossi-Box Lock 500 is the only one that has a built-in cellular modem, but it has 2 SIM cards. So you can have one for AT&T and you can have one for Verizon. And if one dies, it goes to the other one. Or if one's a better service, it'll choose that better service than the other. So that's the one thing.
We're excited because our objective is to use that as our construction period cellular, because we've got to have that anyway, or we got to be on site for everything involved.
That sounds
And then just get rid of the cellular.
Well, we actually got this organization for a year, just from Brave Tool. How much it helps.
Right.
And then after that,
We'll
either get it back or then.
Yeah, we tried so many things. We put it in a contract and says we tell them it's $1,500 a year during the warranty period if you don't give us IT support on that. Who do you get to run? There's just a lot. This is a huge issue for us. I mean, we just wrestle with it.
Yeah, we did basically the same thing what you were saying. We start the job up on the cellular. In the Tossi boxes, you can set the priority of what it uses. And when we set it up, as soon as it sees there's a WAN connection available, in other words, the customer finally brought their network online.
It turns the others up.
It switches the cell's still there. If their network went down, it just switched right until you kill it,
We're gonna keep you guys late after the class. You've been so good. Tossi-Box Lock and Key, the pros, is managed by you. Secure tunnel connection. Hardware and software keys allow easy user management. Ability for hardwired, Wi-Fi, and cellular internet connections. This thing literally is handier than a pocket in a shirt. I can take this on a job site if they're like, we're not giving you internet access. Hey, you got public Wi-Fi? Yeah. Okay, I hooked that to the public Wi-Fi, and guess what? Now I got internet. All my LAN devices are now securely on the network. Everything's good to go. Computer and mobile client. So, I can be sitting here with my computer. I can log into my Tossi-Box client. I can also do it with an app on my phone. So you can, bring up your. One of the great things that I like to have people do. You got your air balancer. Okay. You got a Tossi-Box on the job site. You give him a mobile key for that lock. So then you tell him the IP addresses for all of your 5051 routers. He goes into the 5051 router web page through the Tossi-Box lock key. He goes in, he does all his stuff from his phone, okay? Once he's done, he says, hey man, I'm done. You yank his access, you go back in, you can see all of his VAV stuff, you dump it, you send it to the contractor, and you're off to the rodeo.
You do an audit of that.
Yep, the ability to be configured layer 2 for connecting other programming tools is clutch on this guy. I can go from pulling him out of the box to being fully connected to connect in all of about 10 minutes. The cons on the Tossi-Box though, is depending on the setup, you can expose more than intended, and existing networks are reluctant to have remote devices in bridge mode. And what bridge mode basically means is that it's another, outlet of their internal network. And then this is some Tossi-Box lock and key stuff. Tossi-Box supports 2 different connection types, layer 2, which is bridge, and layer 3, which is routed. This goes through and it basically explains to you the differences. The only difference you really need to know here is if you want to use connector total control, if you want to go layer 2. If you want to just do web browsing, layer 3. Commander IoT platform solution. There's no direct network access through the cloud, so that means that from my app, from my phone, I'm dealing directly with the cloud, so I never have direct access to the on-site equipment. Commander does outbound initiated communications only from the site. So he yells home, every once in a while and says, hey, Commander server, you got anything for me? Commander server says, nope. He says, okay, well, here's all my trends, I'm gonna shut up now. No firewall ports to open. IT guys love this when they don't have to open things and expose parts of their networks. We've got a pretty easy setup, which you guys will see later on today if you guys come see our other presentation. Cards, decks, dashboards, we're gonna be playing poker. We have an app for your BAS. A lot of people, one of the requirements of the job now is to actually go and have an app for that. So we have a Commander app ready to go for you. We can remote trend schedule and alarm. We can do backnet Modbus SNMP straight out of the box. We do third-party integrations through our API, and we have amazing sales technical support. So we do 30 million data points a day, 1 billion API calls a month. This needs to be updated. We've just crossed the 1,000 building mark. In the last 60 days, we've got 99.99959 uptime, and we're over 130 brands of equipment that we've integrated into. Device troubleshooting. If it's broke, let's fix it. Best troubleshooting practices, know what devices should be on your network. Networking layouts are mandatory for support, if you want good support anyway. I always start at the end device. If multiple devices are down, where is the last known good connection? So if I've got 10 BAD boxes and I'm only seeing 1 through 5, I'm probably going to go check out between 5 and 6 for the issue. Troubleshooting step in the path back to front, MSTP device, MSTP network, IP device, IP network front end. Be prepared, have the correct tools, a meter, cable tester, hand tools, updated computer. How many in here are using Windows 7 right now? How many are using Windows XP right now? How many are using Windows 10? All of you guys have. Anybody using anything besides Windows 10?
3.1. They're gonna be here from time to time.
There's always got
It's gonna be
Yeah. No, that's actually one of the biggest challenges as a tech support guy. Somebody will call in and they'll be like, hey, I need you to help me out. Okay, let's open a TeamViewer session up. And they're like, oh yeah, I got a Windows 7 machine and TeamViewer doesn't really work on it because I've only got 2 gigs of RAM. How can you expect us to support you if you don't have good tools? Exactly. So that's why I always say be prepared. 5051 is a service tool too. Don't forget the tools in the router, MSTP, the MSTP network problems can't hide from it. Quality company standards make life way easier. You don't need to be reinventing the wheel on each job. I mean, build a standard and continue it on.
We have a capture tool in the router too, just to hit back on that, so that's great. You can send us a capture and probably help you all faster.
And good standards make troubleshooting check sheets easier to develop for newer building geniuses. So if you guys have standards and you have a new technician come in, it's really easy to get them trained up because if they see 4 jobs in a week, it's going to be kind of similar. Don't be afraid to bifurcate your network. Does everybody know what bifurcate means?
Stop fornicating.
Yeah. If you don't, there's the best KMC video of the decade award right here. It's a YouTube video. It's my buddy Gene Stutzman. He teaches you everything you need to know about MSTP troubleshooting. I highly recommend you go check it out. It is the most viewed video of the KMC ecosystem, so it's really good. And the star of the show is wandering around here, so you should go shake his hand and say, hey, you're the guy from the MSTP video.
You can get his autograph.
Yeah.
Maybe you can autograph his autograph.
Start with one device on the network when all else fails. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a network and it's like, stuff just doesn't work. And it's like, okay, where do you start? It's like, all right, let's just take everything back to ground zero. Let's start with 1 controller. Okay, we got that guy on. Let's go to 2 controllers. Okay, that's good. Now we go to 3. Oh, wait, we got a problem now. Okay, now let's investigate device number 3. Wireshark is your friend. Learn it, love it, live it. IP or MSTP networks. It's got you covered. Extra charge for support without Wireshark capture. I personally like 20-year or better bourbon. I know that my boss likes cigars, so take your choice of what you want to do if you don't want to go as
You don't have to understand Wireshark, you just have to know your email address.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not asking you guys to dissect the MSTP captures at all. I mean, if you guys are on a job site and you need help, get that captured to us. We're gonna help troubleshoot and dissect it for you. And we're getting quick, so yeah. Any questions?
Wire shark is about it.
It is.
Yeah, it's
Like
like
it's on a wire shark? You can capture it there.
you can capture it, but it pokes it out. So then you have to have I don't know if you can do a web browser version. I think I'm gonna stick one of my developers on it. Hey Cody, can you get on that one?
Straight away. Hey, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.